Durga sir, you can start now.
So we
Durga
can
sir?
begin now.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
please.
So a very good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to be back again this Sunday with the Krishnamurti Study Circle Indore. And I want to extend a very warm welcome to our speaker, Dr. David Moody, who has very kindly agreed to address this gathering. David has spoken earlier also, but to many of us who are joining this group for the first time, I'll give I'll give a brief introduction about Dr. David Moody. Uh, Dr. David Moody, PhD, is the author of 3 books about Krishnamurti. His most recent book is Krishnamurti in America, New Perspectives on the Man and His Message. This book represents a full-scale biography of Krishnamurti's life with a special attention to the events in America that have not been covered well in previous biographies. In particular, Krishnamurti's relationship with Rajgopal, both personally and through the course of several lawsuits, is described in some detail. In addition, this biography follows closely the evolution and development of Krishnamurti's philosophy, decade by decade from 6. This research enables Moody to present Krishnamurti's philosophy in a new and more accurate light, one that emphasizes the psychological elements of his teaching. Moody's previous book was an uncommon collaboration, David Bohm and J. Krishnamurti. This book reviews the entire course of the career of theoretical physicist David Bohm with extensive and detailed attention to his interactions and relationship with Krishnamurti. The publication of this book led to Moody's participation as one of the interviewees in the recent biographical film about David Bohm. His first book was The Unconditioned Mind, J. Krishnamurti and the Oak Grove School. In it, pardon me, it describes the issues and individuals who were most instrumental in the early growth and development of the school, with a special attention to Krishnamurti's actions and involvement. Moody was the first teacher hired when Krishnamurti founded the Oak Grove School in Ojai, California in 1975. He subsequently served as educational director of the school and its director, the position he held at the time of Krishnamurti's death in 1986. He later took his PhD in science education, University of California, Los Angeles in 1991, with a focus on student misconceptions in the study of biological evolution. This is briefly about David, and David will be talking to us on a theme, was Krishnamurti really a word teacher? With these words, I welcome Dr. David Moody once again and will request him to take the floor now. Thank you. David, please unmute yourself.
Okay. Thank you very much for the kind introduction and for inviting me tonight. I had a little bit of trouble with my audio in a Zoom meeting a couple of weeks ago, so I hope that doesn't happen again. If you have trouble hearing me or if there's a problem synchronizing between the audio and the visual, let us know. Maybe we can make a correction of some kind. So I want to start by saying that this might not be the typical presentation you have at your study group, because I'm not going to really make a proper presentation for the whole time or even very much of the time. I'm really only going to speak for maybe 10 or 15 minutes or 20 minutes at the most. And the reason for approaching it that way is because really what I want to do is not so much make a definite statement as to raise a question. And I'd like to present an issue to you that I find puzzling and then kind of open it up to see how all of you would answer it. So I won't occupy most of our time with my own remarks, just a few minutes at the beginning. So the question I want to raise with you, as you probably know by now, is, was Krishnamurti really the world teacher? And I'm raising this question not because I have a fixed idea about the answer, but rather because I can see two sides of it. I can see for and against, you might say, and I don't really know how to reconcile the two sides. So I'm going to present the pro and con, the for and against, and then open it up to see what you all have to say. But maybe I think I should begin by saying why I think it may be an important question. And I began thinking about this more seriously a couple of years ago when I was getting ready to publish my most recent book, Krishnamurti in America. And I had a pretty good book agent, and she, distributed the book proposal to all of the major publishers. And the response we got almost uniformly from the various publishers was, well, there's really not very much of a market for Krishnamurti books anymore. The interest in him has diminished greatly, they said, over the course of the last 20 or 30 years. And also, I have been told, I may be mistaken, but I've been told that some of the schools are having issues with declining enrollment. And, that's not the case with Oak Grove here in Ojai, but Oak Grove is a day school, and some of the boarding schools, as I understand it, might be experiencing, some difficulty with keeping a steady enrollment. And also, I should say that part of the background of this question is that, Mary Lutchens, in her biography of Krishnamurti at the end of the second volume, Years of Fulfillment, she raises the question, who or what was Krishnamurti? And in a way, that question is kind of the culmination of her whole book. So I think the question, was Krishnamurti really the world teacher, is kind of related to who or what was Krishnamurti. At least I see it in that context. So for all these reasons, I think this might be an interesting question to pursue. If it's really true that the influence of Krishnamurti and the general awareness of him and his teachings is in fact declining, as seems to be the case, that seems to me like kind of a tragedy. Personally, I feel that his teachings are an extraordinary gift, maybe the greatest gift that humanity has ever received. And so if humanity pays no attention to the gift, or turns its back on it, or ignores it, to me, that's kind of shocking and in a way tragic. So I asked myself, how can this be? Why is this happening? And I think it must have something to do with the image that people have formed of who Krishnamurti is, what he represents, however superficial that image may be. And so that's kind of the background and the context in which I'm raising the question, was Krishnamurti really the world teacher? And does calling him that have anything to do with how he's perceived in the world? Does it help to generate interest and make people more receptive to his message? Or does that label get misunderstood and have the effect of blocking interest in him and turning people off, people who otherwise don't know anything about him? So that's the background, some of the background from which I raised this question, and the reason why I thought it might be worthwhile to discuss it a little bit. And so against that background, I'm going to try to say how I see both sides of the question. First, I'll explain the in favor of calling him the world teacher, and then I'll switch sides and talk about the reasons why we might not want to do that. And so for this purpose, I want to be clear what I mean by world teacher, how I'm using that label. And I'm going to define it in the way that I believe is the essence of the way Annie Besant used that term. And I focus on Annie Besant instead of, Leadbeater or Blavatsky or somebody else, because I feel like Annie Besant was the most important person in Krishnamurti's life as a young man. And she is the one who, as I see it, most strongly associated him with that label. So I might not have this really correct, you can disagree, but here's what I believe is the essence of what Annie Besant meant by that term when she used the phrase world teacher. First of all, I see it as having three components. The first one is, the world teacher is someone who addresses all of mankind. He's not concerned with partial issues. He addresses human beings at their most fundamental level, which is the level below where people are Americans or Russians or Indians or Hindus or Christian or anything like that. So he addresses issues like suffering and fear and pleasure and loneliness, which are things that apply to all human beings everywhere in the world. So that's the first thing to know about the world teacher. And the second thing is that he will be profound and original. He won't be derivative in any way. His purpose will not be to repeat anything that anyone has said in the past. He'll say things that are more or less unique and add something new to the total consciousness of humanity. And the third element, as I understand it, of what Annie Besant essentially meant by world teacher is that his message will be healing. It'll have a beneficial effect on the understanding and consciousness of the world. It will bring clarity and harmony rather than discord or disunity. So it will be good for people as individuals and for humanity as a whole. Now, if these three elements are what we mean by world teacher, then I would say that it's totally correct to call Krishnamurti the world teacher. And so if this is more or less what Annie Besant meant to predict when she said Krishnamurti would become the world teacher, she was not only correct, but her prediction was realized beyond anything she could ever have imagined. Krishnamurti, in my view, not only fulfilled that prediction, he did it 10 times over. And that makes it so extraordinary that she ever made the prediction. I feel it's so extraordinary that she had the insight or the intuition or the clairvoyance or whatever it was that enabled her to predict this about the young Krishnamurti. It's one of the most amazing features of his whole story. So, to that extent, and for those reasons, I would say that it's totally correct and appropriate and even important to identify Krishnamurti in this way. Calling him the world teacher from that perspective is the best and most direct way to state very succinctly who he was and what he was all about. So now, having said that, let me give you the other side of the story, which is the reasons why I feel it might be very wrong and unfortunate and misguided to use that kind of label and attach it to Krishnamurti. So first of all, let me point out and acknowledge that previously I deliberately gave a very kind of one-sided explanation of the meaning of world teacher. I defined it in a way that would be most easy for most people to understand and accept. In particular, you could say that I emphasized sort of the surface elements of that concept. But if you dig a little deeper into what Annie Besant meant by world teacher, right away you come up against some very different ingredients or elements of that concept. In particular, the first thing you come up against is the concept of, the Lord Maitreya, and the idea it is really the Lord Maitreya that is the actual world teacher. And all Krishnamurti was some kind of vehicle or vessel for the Lord Maitreya to inhabit and speak through. Now, that's a very different thing from the elements that I described previously, because now we're deeply into something that most people would consider occult or esoteric or mystical. And I'm not just talking about Lord Maitreya. As far as I understand, Maitreya is just one figure in a whole esoteric cast of characters. And so as soon as you start talking about Maitreya, you're implicitly also talking about ascended masters or masters of wisdom and a whole hierarchy of spiritual or mystical individuals. So I feel like, in a sense, all of that very extensive ideology is implicitly contained within the concept of world teacher. I think it's fair to say that within theosophy, the world teacher is part and parcel of that whole structure of a mystical hierarchy. So now, if all of that is implicitly contained within that concept, then to call Krishnamurti the world teacher really frames him or locates him within the whole worldview and ideology of theosophy. In other words, in essence, he belongs to theosophy. He's a creature of the theosophical mindset, and everything he ever did or said should be viewed or construed within a theosophical context. So from this point of view, attaching the label world teacher to Krishnamurti is really kind of a coded language. It's a not very subtle way of identifying him as a theosophist and as the fulfillment of the basic principles and concepts of the Theosophical Society. Now, I would say that it's wrong and misleading to interpret who Krishnamurti was in that way and to interpret the meaning of his teaching in that way. I would say that makes him into something limited and partial and not at all representative of who he was and what he was about. I even think the case can be made that he kind of spent his whole life after 1929 trying to get away from that way of thinking about him. So to construe him in that way seems to me to be false and misleading. And even if you use that label, world teacher, but somehow you disassociate it from Maitreya and the spiritual hierarchy, let's say you make clear that you only mean by that label, the way I first defined it, someone who speaks to all of humanity with an original message and a message that is very healing or beneficial for people. I think that even if you try to do that, you're going to still be stuck with the same problem, because no matter how you try to explain it, I don't think you can separate the concept of world teacher from theosophy. At least here in the United States, I don't know of anyone who uses that language except theosophists. And beyond that, at least in the United States, the whole idea of calling someone a teacher has very negative connotations among the public at large. I don't mean that, let me put it differently. If someone is a teacher, normally, as we use that word, someone who's a teacher, that means they teach children in an elementary school or a secondary school, and nobody has a problem with that. There's no negative connotations associated with that meaning. But if somebody goes around speaking to adults about fundamental issues of living, and they're not a professor, and they don't consider themselves a philosopher or a therapist or anything of that kind, but they call themselves a teacher, for most people in this culture, it means that person is probably some kind of a cult figure, maybe somebody like the Maharishi or Rajneesh, and very likely phony and kind of flaky. And so the idea that a person who calls himself a teacher might have something useful to say is something that maybe 1% or 2% of the population is even open to consider. And then if that person is not only a teacher in that sense, but a world teacher, to most people, it probably just means they have a bigger cult, or they're a bigger charlatan than some other teacher like Rajneesh. So I wonder if attaching this label to Krishnamurti is one of the reasons or contributing factors that block many people from paying any attention to him or seriously considering what he has to say. You know, if we are talking among ourselves or speaking to a very limited circle of people, that label, it might have some useful meaning. But as soon as we get outside this limited circle, I feel this label might be misleading and have negative consequences in terms of helping people who don't know anything about Krishnamurti understand who or what he was all about. So that's my dilemma. I see both sides of the question very strongly and very clearly. And it's a dilemma because I don't know how to reconcile it. Both sides of the equation seem to me true, that it's totally accurate and appropriate and beneficial to call him that, because in a certain sense, it is very, very accurate and succinct kind of label to attach to him. But on the other hand, I see how that phrase is heard by the large majority of people who don't know anything about him. And that's not in a positive way. It's not something which has any meaning to people other than something kind of weird and flaky and like, I don't want to know anything more about that person. He thinks he's something which is silly or ludicrous. I think that's, in all honesty, the way, at least in this country, 98% of the general public would respond to a label like that. And so there you have it. That's my dilemma. And I bring it to you as a question because I really don't know how to resolve it. And I just wanted to put it out there, put the question out there, and, reserve most of our time together to hear how you all think about this, how you respond to this. Maybe you feel like it's not even an important question, or maybe you feel like it's obvious one way or the other, or maybe you have some entirely different angle or way to shed light on it. And that is what I wanted to bring to you. And that's pretty much all I have to say. I just want to hear your responses to all of this, if you feel like discussing it. I'm not the host of this meeting, so I don't know how to proceed. I don't know how to invite other people to speak. I'm not the host, so it has to be somebody else taking charge.
Krishnamurti, Kesiraju.
Yes, sir.
Please go ahead.
Are you
Go
able to
ahead.
hear?
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. The first point I would like to make is that quite often Krishnamurti was asked, especially in India, as to who are you? And his response has always been, I am nobody. And sometimes he would turn the question and put it to the questioner and say, are you addressing the question to me or to yourself? This to me is the hallmark of Krishnamurti, where there is a total absence of any identification or self-identity as far as he was concerned. The second point is, I would like to ask Dr. David Moody, can we say that this particular question, whether he was a world teacher or not, there could be another dimension and say that can we say that this question itself is irrelevant in one way, because it does not mean anything to those who actually understand and live his teachings, and also to those who do not understand at all. The more importantly, I think there is a danger lurking of this label getting strengthened and influencing maybe the future generations who come, who would like to actually know what Krishnamurti was talking about. I would like Dr. David Moody to respond to this, please.
Okay. Can you hear me? Am I on mute or can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so, I understand that Krishnamurti addressed this question a little bit himself, but, he died decades ago, and the meaning of words and language and culture changes over time. And the part of the question that I'm trying to pose is I'm not so much asking, was Krishnamurti really the world teacher? We can have our own ideas about that. I'm really more addressing the question, what happens when you use that label to people who don't know anything about him? And I think what you were saying is you were suggesting the possibility that that label can have a negative effect on, new generations or people coming new to this. And I totally agree. That's part of what I'm trying to say and the reason I raised the question.
Jagan Sheshadri, please unmute and ask.
Thank you, sir.
Jagan.
Sir, I have unmuted. Shall I proceed? Thank you so much.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Sir, I actually wanted to second the previous speaker because whatever I have also read or seen the videos of Krishnaji is that Krishnaji was always very clearly never wanting to encourage any labels for that matter. So in that perspective, it would not be right for us to worry about the label. But I also see your concerns in terms of this gift to humanity not being accessible to people in case if this label is going to be attached. I completely see what you're saying. And therefore, probably for people who are, let me put it this way, probably friends of Krishnaji, as we are all, because Krishnaji always wanted us to be his friends because he encouraged the space of friendship because they were equals and there was a possibility for people to have a dialogue. So being that way as we are, it also sort of becomes our responsibility to address that issue. And I'm at the moment not able to think of any solution, but I agree with you that we need to address that question. Thank you very much for the opportunity, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Parekh, sir.
Yeah, are you able to hear?
Say something, Moody, sir. Sir, Moody wanted to address something. After that,
all I said was thank you. I appreciated his observation. I just said thank you.
Thank you. Parekh, sir.
Yes, are you able to hear my voice?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. The way Krishnaji talked with such a power, a kind of authenticity, it seems to me that he felt that his teachings are very, very great, and he wanted the teachings to be preserved for humanity for many, many years, maybe 1,000 years. So it seems to me, but I think the teachings are such that very few people will be interested in, because the teachings leads to kind of a nothingness. And he says, happy is the person who is nothing. That means to be free from ego, and generally that doesn't appeal to most people, and so they may not be attracted if the final aim is to be nothing. No doubt he has affected many people all over the world, including myself. So I feel that people who are genuinely interested in looking at their own self with a great curiosity and attention, they begin to see how the problems are created by themselves because of lack of ignorance or awareness. And his teachings were, the main purpose was to awaken that intelligence. Even when he talked with young students, he was very passionate, and he wanted to awaken that intelligence very quickly, not too much thinking and discussing over many years, but while people listening to him, he wanted something to ignite in people. And it may require many more years to decide whether Krishnamurti was a world teacher or not. But in my view, yes, he was a world teacher. And one thing is that Krishnamurti himself felt that there was no one who really understood him. So in a way, he was pessimistic too about that maybe the teachings, the level was too high for humanity to really look very clearly. And sometimes he said freedom is at the beginning. So very few people can see with freedom what is happening within themselves. And Krishnamurti, people who were very close to him physically, like Rajagopal and Rosalind, they did not think very high of Krishnamurti. And so some people may ask why Krishnamurti was not able to affect people who were very close to him for many years. And some people say that what Krishnamurti is saying is very similar to what Buddha had said. And so there is nothing new in what Krishnamurti is saying. But for the modern people, intellectual people, they can find something in Krishnamurti. The challenging question, which is, from where do this everything is coming, the problems in humanity, the conflict. And the conflict which Krishnaji said is it is between the thinker and thought. So everything is arising from thinking, and from thinking comes this sense of self, and that self wants to change thinking, saying that I like it or I don't like it. So that basic conflict one has to really see within oneself to be free, and that may be not easy for most people. So I think I have just expressed my views. Thank you very much.
Pradeep Verma ji, please unmute and ask.
Yes, I think I am audible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you are
So,
audible.
For me, what is important is the teaching, not the teacher. Because the source of knowledge, we might say that Maitreyi said that, but does it solve the problem? Does it make me more intelligent?
So something happened. He got muted, I think.
You are not audible.
He got muted.
I think we can go to the next person.
No. Is it? Am I not audible?
Now you are okay.
Okay. Okay. So what I said, that what is important is the teaching. One can always question what was the source of knowledge in Maitreyi, and ad infinitum you can go on asking this question. It's not the question of propriety. It's not the question of putting label on this or that or that. It is between teaching, what I have teachings are, and myself. That's all. That's all.
May I respond to that? Can I respond to that?
Yeah, please do.
Please, sir, please.
Okay, so I totally agree. What matters is the teaching and not the teacher. That's obviously the case. But 99.99% of the population of the world are not going to have access to the teaching because they never would have heard of him. And I'm suggesting one of the reasons they won't hear of him is because the people who know about him go around attaching a label like world teacher, which has the effect of turning people off and saying, I don't want to have anything to do with it.
Okay. Understandable. Right.
Vijay Chhabra, sir. Vijay Chhabra, sir.
Yeah.
Chhabra.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
See, ideation, labeling, image making, these are all very deep issues. We all experience that every day, day in and day out, in all our relationships, and that's at all levels in society. It's a very deep issue. I think as I understand, your main issue is how does one communicate that? How does one communicate that it actually doesn't matter. We understand it doesn't matter whether one considers him a word teacher or not. But what is probably is a deeper concern is that people don't get put off and they at least allow themselves to have access to this treasure. And then they do whatever they want to do, but not block themselves a priori. I think that's as I understand, that's the main difficulty. How does one communicate?
Yes, totally. That's why I said I'm raising this question in the context that I spent 3 years of my life writing the biography. And when you're writing that, you are concerned with how is this being presented to the world and what effect does it have? And so that's what it's in that context that I'm not asking, did Krishnamurti himself consider himself to be the world teacher? I'm asking if we use that label, what does it communicate to people? And does it facilitate or block people having access to the teachings?
So isn't it also somewhat similar? It's of course, when it comes to person, it has a different dimension, but also the way we communicate teachings, if it is communicated in an explorative way, that it's issues that concern us, and we take up those issues, and they are part of a human consciousness. They concern you as much as me as a third person, from wherever one may come, from whichever community one may come. Issues are, so common, and sometimes you hear such interesting remarks from an ordinary, semi-educated person also. He says, how does this chap know what is happening in my own mind? So a young person of 18, 20 who is, reads something in translation and says after half an hour, how does he know what is happening to my mind? What is happening here? So this is where the communication happens actually. So it's always I think the issue is, or whether the focus our own very natural focus in our communication is exploring the issues because we are also interested in them. And we haven't done with that. We have not finished and say, okay, I've got something in my bag and I can deliver that. So if we are, in a live way, like, we see that those issues are very alive with us, and from there, if communication is happening, whether it is somebody's teaching, is it really somebody's teaching we are communicating, or is it are these truths or experiences or questions that we are facing and want to confront, want to face and communicate from there. So I think it may be a little more difficult in books. I don't know. See, a lot of things are happening in YouTube and all these media where the person is there. And even if you have not heard of him, you just listen, you see the comments of many people who probably hear for the first time, who probably are not even may not be at the moment, aware of the fact that he's no more or he lived in the last century. They give their comments as if they've come across something so extraordinary. So at that level, I think communication will happen to those who are also seeking or who have certain hunger, and they will catch it. And if you are always analyzing everything and intellectually dealing with things and doing window shopping, of course you will have your own similar, depending on your vessel you carry, you get the product, so capture it. So that's one thing. But in through books, maybe difficult to communicate because there invariably you end up putting metaphors, putting some ideas, some statements, and some labels. So now the question is, how does one communicate there, even in that form? Or I don't know whether that's the issue at the moment, on the top, or in general, it is difficult to communicate whether he was a word teacher or not. But if it can be communicated in that explorative way, that what is, that maybe its question, it doesn't matter. For instance, his own statement, it doesn't matter whether I'm a word teacher or not. So what is important is, are we looking at facts as they are? So whatever the teaching, so actually bringing out the questions that concern, that touch human consciousness, and that are also all the time, they are perennial questions, and they are so more or less take different forms, but underneath they remain topical. I mean, look at the pandemic. This is basically what? Fear and facing fear and fear of death. And these are perennial. This is not new, but only mirror has come too close to us that we can't run away easily. That's all. So I think it's finding different ways of communicating something that is alive in words that don't necessarily remain alive. So I think that's the probably issue. Thank you.
You want to respond, Moody sir?
No, I don't think so. I take what he has to say. If you think that the question itself is not important, that's fine. Then we don't have to discuss it. But I'm raising this question for people who feel that it might be significant and might be affecting the way Krishnamurti is received or not received. As I say, I'm putting this in the context that his influence and just people's general awareness of him is diminishing, and perhaps diminishing rapidly. And you may think, this question is not very significant, but I think it becomes significant if that label, as on the title of some biography of Krishnamurti, or in some other wide usage, if that's blocking people and contributing to the fact that nobody's paying attention to him anymore, then I think it has a certain significance. Of course, we can all agree that, yeah, the teachings are what matter, not the teacher. I get that. But there's another dimension when the teachings are not accessible to the vast majority of the world because people haven't heard of him. And why haven't they heard of him? Because he's got this label attached to him that is odd and strange and off-putting.
I have a question. Is labeling the only way to communicate? It's a question. Is labeling the only way to communicate?
Of course, it's not the only way, but it's a strong way.
Because that's
Put
creating a
that on the
problem, no?
title of your biography, or make that the way you introduce him. If that's the way that people first get introduced to Krishnamurti, who is Krishnamurti? Oh, he was world teacher. Okay, thanks a lot. I don't want to hear any more about it. That's the way most people will react, at least in this country.
Jose, sir.
Good morning, everybody.
Jose.
See, I think, may I speak? I hope I am audible.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
After listening to Mr. Moody, I think that the main concern is that though he's a world teacher, his teachings has not reached the different corners of the world. So as a professional accountant and as an ordinary human being, I would like to look at it this way. I would like to put forward a practical suggestion for this. My suggestion is that we should take up the issue with the Prime Minister of India or the heads of other states and ask them to provide some money, ask for a provision in the budget for propagating the teachings of J. Krishnamurti. The advantage is that if it teaches the different corners of the world, definitely the expenditure on defense will drastically come down. Through this way, I think we can bring peace on this. I think this is the only way, because we are always trying to look at it from the consciousness of J. Krishnamurti. I am talking from my own level of consciousness, and this is only the practical way. We need to take his teaching to different corners of the world, and we should resort to some sort of, instead of just getting stuck to Krishnamurti's teaching, I think we should look at it in a practical way and put in all efforts to spread his teaching, to reach his teaching to different corners. It's a necessity. Otherwise, we are going to ask. I was listening to Mr. Krishna last week, and he says that human beings are going to be extinct in by the end of the century. So it's a very serious concern for us. We have to do something. We have to put a lot of effort. We have to form groups, and there should be. Krishnamurti is no more with us now. Now it is our duty to take his teaching to all parts of the world somehow. And we don't have to look at it from his level of consciousness. That's my humble session. Thank you, Anand.
Shekharam.
Yes, Raj. Good morning to all. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, you are audible.
I actually fully agree with Pradeep, sir. See, Jiddu Krishnamurti himself has told that what is said is important, who is said is not important. So, according to him also, what are his teachings are more important than labeling. Jiddu Krishnamurti he was against any labeling also. Always your light has to be guided. That was the first principle. So we will read his teachings, then our light has to guide. And he never wanted that label also. Even he denied world teacher, and he dismantled that organization, Star of the East also. From this we can understand that he was never interested to be labeled as a world teacher. His teachings are to be preserved. Whoever is interested in his teachings can read those teachings and should be enlightened himself by his own light. That was the idea, or that was the directive of the Jiddu Krishnamurti. He never said, do not make any commentary on my teachings. At the same time, do not make any propaganda also. I fully agree with sir. That is true. And recently I came to know through one of my friends, maybe 10 days back, in Andhra Pradesh, CBSE, the Andhra Pradesh state syllabus, class 9, Jiddu Krishnamurti, one lesson is included in the textbook. But I have not come across, I am trying to get that book. What is written in that, I will communicate later when I get that book. Okay, sir, this is what I wanted to express my opinion. Thank you, sir, for giving this opportunity. Okay, sir.
Shirali, sir. Shirali, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I just wanted to say that I'm not sure that the reason that there is an insufficient reach of Krishnamurti in the world is because of overemphasis of this term, this label, world teacher. In fact, I would say that certainly in India, for example, I don't know about America. In India, people who are associated with, who have studied Krishnamurti's teachings deeply, they tend on the whole to be a rather shy lot, and they don't actually speak much about Krishnamurti. They may speak about the teachings, but they don't talk much about Krishnamurti, the person. And that's one point. And the other point, I think, is much more serious, and that is that the forces in the world, I think, are much too strong right now. And the desires of people, for example, there are lots of gurus in the world, but what those gurus give their disciples is what the disciples want. And Krishnamurti does not give any such thing to anybody. I think he is, from the point of view of most people, and he simply does not give the kinds of things that they are looking for. They want some kind of approval, some kind of guidance, being put on a path, being promised this, that, or the other, and he refuses to do any such thing. And that, so there are very few people are going to be attracted to that kind of it's a very serious and a very hard teaching. And I think most people don't want to go in that direction. The very nature of the teaching is such that I can't see ever large numbers of people being attracted to it. It is for very serious people. So it is true that in the current situation, the world situation is so bad, and we very urgently need a greater awareness of the misuse of power, the misuse, the greed, the way we deal with nature, the way we deal with each other, authority. But somehow the message does not go across at all. That's all. Thank you.
Do you want to respond it? Moody, do you want to respond it? Yeah, please.
No, I think he may be right. The label, there are many reasons why the teachings are difficult to absorb for many people, and the issue of how he is labeled world teacher or not, or however you call him, is just one factor among many. But I would suggest that it is a contributing factor, and to the extent that it is, I think it's worthwhile thinking about it. Again, if I might make just one more point, again, the reason this is significant, if it's significant, is whether or not a label of that kind blocks people from ever even hearing of Krishnamurti or paying any attention to the teachings. We can all agree the teachings are what important and not the teacher, but if the label is blocking people from learning about it, then it's a problem.
Sheshadri.
Sir, yes, sir. I just want to add and rather respond to one of our friends who was talking about taking initiatives of the sort of approaching the government and the state level. And my only concern is it is a very thin line between propaganda and trying to create awareness. And we need to be extremely careful, because Krishnaji was very clearly pointing out to us the danger of propaganda as to how that makes people dependent. And that is definitely something which he never wanted to happen. And having said that, it is also very important to find ways of appealing to the younger population. I feel that is the responsibility of people who have seen this as a gift. And it is more important the way we are going to present it, because I believe what is important is also the way we present it. Is also going to be very important. So it wouldn't be an overstatement to say if we can actually look at how we can present differently, because if I remember, there is an attempt from the Krishnamurti Foundation America, where they are making short videos. I've been watching them on a regular basis, where there is a voiceover, which is probably a small thing from case teaching, but there is a very beautiful visual presentation that goes, which is a very short presentation, but from a perspective of a person who's not knowing Krishnaji, but that presentation is very appealing, because one thing that I've observed is largely today, people want to consume a lot of visual content, and the way they are used to consuming that kind of content. So probably we need to look at ways of that kind in a way that this is something that is palatable, that is something which people can appreciate. So I think that is the way to go, also to address the problem of avoiding that label. I hope I've made a small suggestion. Thank you.
Durga Rani, please unmute and come forward. Durga Rani.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Moody. Yeah, Mr. Moody, sorry. Yeah. I think, you raised a few fundamental questions about the title, appropriateness of the title, the world teacher, and your concern about not many people getting drawn to the teaching, why it is not getting popular in all the other countries, across the globe, because as a Krishnamurti reader, you also may be feeling very passionate that, this is such a wonderful gift humanity has received. So more and more people should come around it, should read it, and should get touched by it. I think that can be the concern for any, reader who is touched by Krishnaji's books. Okay. And the title, The World Teacher, I feel, sometimes it may be more of an attraction for people to come around, to read the book when they know that, some world teacher, because the title itself is so impressive. There is that side also to it, because the title he never wanted. That's what has been projected and imposed on him. But in retrospect, we all agree, that if you are the world and the world is you, and if you have accepted him as a friend or a teacher at your level, then the world he's the world teacher. So it's as simple as, the last answer he had given to the people about the spread and how far it can penetrate. He says it's all up to you, sir. If you live the teaching, and if you have the perfume with you, you need not do anything. It gets, it spreads and it attracts people. He really simplified it in such, such simple words. So that's the thing with Krishnaji. His teaching is so difficult, but he made it look, very simple. He said he's not concerned. He said just preserve the books and take care that archives and all are well maintained. But regarding the spread of the teaching, it's up to the humanity, how far they can take it. If you leave the teaching, the perfume will spread. Automatically, it gets connected. It's as simple as that, sir. And one more thing, sir, I just would like to say, all this perennial wisdom and philosophy and it is this far greater insights. They have a very long life, sir. For the moment, we may look that, without a shorter perceptions, we may think that, they are not reaching out. We don't know how far they are getting penetrated. We don't know. Do we have an assessment, sir? I don't think so. I think he must have touched millions of people and keep on doing that. There may be many people who are silently reading him and, getting affected by his teaching and getting and deriving the beauty of it. So I feel, that is also my main concern also, they should reach to, because there's a lover of the teaching or lover of the Krishnaji's book. we all feel that, it should reach to more and more people. And one more thing, sir, like all my previous speakers, they all are contributing so well to this, today's dialogue. It's becoming a part of the syllabus. I think this proposal was, put to Krishnaji when he was alive, and he didn't have any objection to it. So why can't we make it as a part of syllabus all over the world? It is speaking about humanity, our day-to-day life. So why can't it be? It is the most appropriate thing to be included in the part of the syllabus. So why can't we do it in the schools, in the colleges, and the universities, sir? I think that should be a main area, apart from leaving the teaching and talking in the informally, and this also has a greater role. But why not do that, sir? That's all I want to say, sir. Thank you so much. Good day.
Thank
you. May I say something?
After Clemis Peter, sir.
Okay.
After Clemis Peter, you can say.
Okay. Okay.
Clemis Peter, please come forward.
Okay, so good morning to everybody. And first of all, I would like to thank Mr. David Moody to raise this question, because to be honest, it's the first time that I think about it in this way. And it helps to think and to raise the question. So as far as I can see, there are two questions here. One is about labeling, and the other one is about the teachings reaching more and more people. So Mr. Moody brings up the question about the label of the world teacher. But Krishnamurti has been labeled with other things also. He has been labeled as a philosopher. I have seen many flyers where people announce him as a philosopher. That's also a label. And that may also turn people down, some people. So the question really is, do labels help or do they turn people down? Any label. This is just one more label. And as far as I can understand, labels are not fair, because Krishnamurti would not, you cannot really put his teachings under any such label.
I agree.
Any label at all. So that creates a difficulty for us to reach out to people even.
Absolutely.
So we have to really find out a way. And then the next question is, why Krishnamurti teachings are not reaching out in a bigger way, in a more significant way? Why are people not coming to know about him? I myself came to know about him when I was 38 years old. So that was quite, I really would be very happy if I could have known about him much earlier. It would have helped me in many ways in my life, no doubt about that. And so that is a question that I think have to be explored in a deeper way by everybody. And I don't think propaganda is a good way, because if we understand the consequences of propaganda, because if we expose a person who is not really interested or really ready and we push it, that may not help, that may even hinder a person. So the whole idea of how to reach out to people is a concern and should be really gone into it more deeper. That's my feeling. And what I do personally is, when I talk to young people, I talk as I understand him. That's the only way I can talk. And about day-to-day problems. And many times they ask me, where did I get this from, or how do I come to this? And then I say, I have been reading J. Krishnamurti. If you want, there are many books, and then I tell the name of the books and like that. So those who are interested in going deeper in it, they go. But I feel to immediately tell, read Krishnamurti, or even when somebody comes, I don't know, I think everybody knows I'm living in the Theosophical Society. And when somebody says, can you please indicate me a book? I said, I cannot, because it is up to each one. The book that you feel attracts you, calls you, that is the one you should read, because that's how it works for me. So I'm not a person of indicating anything to anybody, because I really feel each one should find out for himself. and what may help me may not help others. So we have to also respect this in people. So it is really a question of how to reach out for more and more people who are interested and who are ready to read Krishnamurti. So, but this is not something that we can find out in 5 minutes in a discussion like this. So again, I would really like to thank Mr. Moody for bringing up this question today. That's what I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Harsad Parekh, sir.
Yes.
Harsad Parekh.
Yes, even in Krishnamurti schools, Krishnamurti is not. Are you able to hear?
Yes.
Yeah, we are able to hear.
Yeah, even in Krishnamurti schools, Krishnamurti is not taught like as a subject, because people feel that it has to come from within. Some teachers who are interested in Krishnamurti's teachings, they have some culture class, and at that time they discuss various things connected with Krishnamurti and the teachings. So making syllabus is not a good idea about Krishnamurti. And I feel that those people who are ready for the teachings comes to them somehow. Like it came to me in a very strange way. Nobody told me about, and I was passing by a bookshop and I saw a book and I did not know who was Krishnamurti. But when I started reading, I felt that yes, what this person says is true, because I could see it in myself. So many people might come to Krishnamurti unexpectedly, and that will begin to change their life. And Krishnamurti was against propaganda. So that is also, we can't, and he did not like, he had nothing good to say about politicians. So politicians also will not like what he is saying, because it is quite different. It has to do with the freedom from the self. And very, very few people would like to consider being free from the self is desirable. So, okay, I have finished my comments. Thank you.
Moody sir, you wanted to comment on it?
No, I don't have a response to that.
Of course. Durga Rani wanted to say something. Please unmute and say.
Yes, sir.
Durga Rani.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I think my previous, the participant, he said that, it's not a good idea to introduce Krishnaji's books as a form of curriculum. I think earlier I also was holding this kind of a view because, Krishnaji's books are definitely far more tougher, sir. But, introduce them in the schools as a part of curriculum is better than making it into a religion, making it into monasteries and all that kind of stuff, sir. And why I brought up this issue is, recently I have been reading a book by Mark Lee, Knock at the Open Door. In that, there was a mention of, Mark Lee, I think, brought the proposal to Krishnaji that, this can it be introduced in the university? And Krishnaji himself had answered, why not? Why not you do it? In fact, based on that, my reading of that book, an instance from Krishnaji, I felt, why not it just introduce him rather than making it a religion and monastic, because I think it is live things, sir. I think we need to think out of the box also. If we don't make an attempt, before itself we come out with all our, mental blocks to try it. Why not? Who is stopping it? So unless and until we try, how will we come to know whether it's a success or a failure? Let the people understand, read it. And if they have the seriousness to go into it, they will go. So why have to have these mental blocks in the beginning itself? I think the beautiful thing about Krishnaji is it is a live thing. Make it is a challenging thing. Just don't sit there, discuss perpetually, make, it's not that. Take the challenges. I think I was, in fact, Mr. Moody, I was reading about, how the Ogru school had come into, nature, and how, there I have read about you also, Mr. Markley's descriptive, the biography, autobiography kind of a book. So he says, unless and until we challenge, unless and we take initiatives, how will we come to know about all these things? So this is the question I would like to throw it, sir. Thank you. That's all.
You wanted to comment on it, Moody sir? Do you wanted to comment on it?
I'm not sure I really understand the question. As far as, having people teach in the university, I totally concur that would be a great way for the teachings to be represented in a certain way. As far as Oak Grove School is concerned, Markley's book is not a good source for that kind of information, but that's another very different matter than what we're talking about here.
That's all?
Yeah.
Dinesh Waghmare.
Are you able to listen to me, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah, we are all are able to listen.
Sir,
go ahead.
My views are, since Krishnamurti, time has changed a lot. Now things have become very fast. People are not reading so many such big books. My views are, if one young person approaches Krishnamurti, he has to go through a lot of books, or the messages and teachings are scattered in so many years. So he has to do a lot of efforts, which in today's scenario or today's time, it is very difficult to, he doesn't have that much time to go into that deep and this thing. So there should be effort to make although Krishnamurti said that nobody should interpret his teaching, but there should be an effort, in my views, to make the teachings concise, precise, and to the point. And so that when the young person gets interest in it, and he can move forward. Because in today's world, to read such big books and to go through such scattered so many years message of Krishnamurti or teaching is very difficult. So I want to Mr. David Moody to respond on this.
I totally concur that the teachings are difficult for many people, especially when you get, the teachings are like a bottomless ocean. You can go deeper and deeper and deeper into them. And but there are many aspects of the teachings which are accessible, which you can read it and you don't have to have some tremendous insight, just have an open mind. And there are many comments and observations and insights that are available and easily understood. So I know Krishnamurti said at the end of his life that nobody fully understood it, and I know that some of the crucial aspects of the teachings are difficult to understand and absorb, but there's also a great deal of it which is not so difficult, which is accessible, and which, as I said at the beginning, is a tremendous gift to humanity. And I feel that that gift is not being shared anywhere nearly as widely as would really be appropriate.
May I say something?
Sakti
Yes, sir.
Kumar, after Sakti Kumar, sir.
Okay.
Please.
Okay.
Please, after Sakti.
Yeah.
Sakti Kumar, please unmute and say.
Yes, sir. My voice is reaching, sir. Yeah.
Yes.
Reaching.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
You see, this nomenclature, the word teacher, is, especially in India, you see, they call Shankaracharya the word teacher. Also, Lord Krishna is called word teacher. So it doesn't add anything to, when I saw this book, the word teacher, it doesn't add to the stature of Krishnamurti. Krishnamurti, the name itself is enough. And the second thing is that, it's no harm in learning and teaching Krishnamurti in universities or schools. But the thing is that his message should not be diluted. You see, its depth should not be harmed. Just that I wanted to say. Thank you.
Parekh sir, Harshad Parekh
Yes,
sir.
yes. Even in Krishnamurti schools, students and parents and teachers, they don't join these schools because they are interested very deeply into Krishnamurti teachings. So no doubt students they can read very, very big books by many intellectuals. But when about Krishnamurti, they are not attracted because it requires looking inside within oneself. Then it becomes very interesting. But as just an idea, it is not very interesting. So sometimes even when we try to bring Krishnamurti's teachings to students, they don't find it very interesting. And even older students who have left Rishi Valley many, many years ago, they also don't get attracted to Krishnamurti teachings because the nature is such that people who are interested in learning about their inner world, such people will be attracted. And these are very, very few, maybe 5 to 10% people will be interested in looking inside and see whether what Krishnamurti says is true or false. So that is the main difficulty, why people are not interested in Krishnamurti. But it doesn't matter. I think those who are deeply interested, they will find really great beauty in the teachings. Okay, finish.
Krishna Pani Kesiraju. Krishna Pani, please unmute and say. Please unmute and say.
Okay, am I audible?
Yeah, audible.
Yeah.
I have actually put a question on the chat, which is related to the question being discussed today about whether Krishnamurti is a world teacher or not. What I would like to know is there are several people in the participants who were personally knew Krishnaji and who were close to him. My question is, what is the experience of these persons who have been actually and physically close to Krishnaji? Did it really make a difference to them being in Krishnaji's presence beyond his teachings? That's the relevance. Calling Krishnaji as a world teacher for the future may not make any impact, but did it make it to those people who were really close to him? I would like Dr. Moody and also Professor P. Krishna to enlighten us on this.
Okay, so yeah, I was one of the people who, had the opportunity and the privilege to work with Krishnamurti, to see him in a lot of different situations at teachers' meetings and at the lunch table and, a few private conversations. And I would say that direct exposure had, it had a significant effect. It teaches you something about who he is and who he's not. Somebody earlier tonight in this presentation, somebody said that the people who were most close to Krishnamurti really were not all that impressed with him. And they mentioned Rajagopal and Rosalind. I would say that Rajagopal and Rosalind are the two most unlikely and unreliable witnesses regarding the effect of personal interaction with Krishnamurti, and a great many people who spent time with him had a very, very, very different experience of what it meant to be in his presence. So yeah, I think that that's helpful. And that the first book I wrote is called The Unconditioned Mind. It's all about, it includes everything that I observed in 10 years of interacting with him. And I wrote it precisely for that reason, to share my sense of what it was like to be in his presence, which includes, you know, many, many things that he said and the way he acted and interacted with the school, all of which I felt was very interesting and revealing. Part of it in kind of, you know, a non-verbal way, and part of it in a way of understanding what he's not as much as what he is. So yeah, I thought it was great to have that opportunity.
Yeah, may I say something?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, I had an opportunity to talk with Krishnaji one-to-one and many dialogues with teachers in Rishi Valley School. And I had also listened to him in Ojai, California in 1977, 78, 79. And I would say that, yes, his personal presence affected me very, very much more than the books and videos. But I think it depends on the mutual interaction. It is not one way. The way Krishnamurti affects some people is different than the way his presence affects other people. So it is like a kind of a relationship. What kind of relationship we have? What kind? There is a relationship at physical level, then there is at a mental level, and then there is a relationship beyond mental level, which is looking without images. And that is what very important in getting something from Krishnamurti, not thinking of him as a great man and looking at him with many images that he is great. That doesn't help, and he also did not like it. But if one can just look at him as a human being without any images, then certainly there is a great impact of the personal presence of Krishnamurti. And I experienced that many times. Thank you.
Jagan Sheshadri. Jagan Sheshadri, last question. Jagan Sheshadri, please unmute and say.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's yet another submission or an understanding that I wanted to share. It is in continuation to what I had said earlier. I think there is a necessity to understand the way the mind of young people works today, and rather repurpose or make it in a way that they can appreciate the teaching. Because in my observation and interaction with young people for the last many years, one thing that I saw is, if we are able to exhibit through our behavior, not by words but by behavior, that we really care for them, they become open. And that is very important, I believe, is to even take the teachings and to share this treasure of Krishnaji's teachings. So I still wanted to say some of the attempts that are done currently using some of the new ways in making, as they say, vlogging, video blogging is what I thought the effort that was done by the Krishnamurti Foundation America. Such efforts are critical if we want to ensure that more and more people are able to access the insights and the teachings of Krishnaji. Thank you for the opportunity.
Moody, we will like to listen you more because only 5 minutes are left. So would you please summarize it now after listening everybody?
Okay, well, I'm not sure that I can summarize it. Really, you all heard what I said at the beginning, and at my impression of the responses from everybody who's spoken is that people are looking at this from a great variety of points of view. And, you know, that I can't see any easy way to summarize it except to say that, you know, I think that to some extent, some people have acknowledged that there is, in fact, a difficulty, that the teachings are a gift of tremendous value that for various reasons many people don't have access to because they're not aware of who Krishnamurti is or have any concept of him. And I understand that part of the reason for that is that the teachings themselves are somewhat difficult, and it may not be appealing to people to look inward or do something that has, or take an interest in something that has no obvious benefit or payoff. So I understand and agree that there's multiple reasons why you know, the teachings are not more widely appreciated. But I would just wrap up by saying again that to me it's unfortunate. Again, I'm speaking from perspective of the United States. I don't know what it's like in Europe. I don't know what it's like in India, but at least in this country, there are many people who might appreciate the teachings and like to go into it and like to learn about it, but they never have the opportunity. And the reason they don't have the opportunity is because they never heard of Krishnamurti, or if they heard of him, they heard something very superficial, like quote unquote world teacher, which has no appeal to them, so they don't bother to look further. And I feel that's very unfortunate, and it's something that all of us who are interested in the teachings deserve to give a little bit of attention to.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Thanks to every participant. Just I have to announce that 15th August, there will be no session, and 22nd August, Krishnamurti Teaching and Environment by Sripati Dubey. So please attend on 22nd of August. Thank you. Thanks to everybody. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Please close it, Kamlesh ji.